Hi there. If you're just coming on to the Zoom, you are in the right place at the right time. This is the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Single Parent Families. And we have a meeting today on the Single Parent Employment Challenge. Very timely because we've had the budget the other week. It seems like 6 months ago. I think it was only last week, wasn't it? Lots of changes going on. And I'm very proud to say we have a stellar panel. We've got Victoria Benson, the CEO of Gingerbread. They're the longest running, over 50 years old charity dealing with single parent issues that was formed, I think, out of the ashes of the film Cathy Come Home. So really lucky to have their CEO, Victoria Benson. We've got Jane Fonsell of Working Families. She's the CEO as well. And top of the tree in the hierarchy, we also have Mims Davies, one of the nicest people in politics and the Minister for Employment at the DWP and also MP for Mid Sussex. So I've been given a few bits and pieces of housekeeping. I feel I should be like a sort of giving the exits, the emergency thing, what to happen when your mask comes down. But on the whole, it's being recorded, so it'll be available to view after the APPG is finished. Everyone can, I think we can just see the speakers for the moment, but everyone can sort of comment in the comment bar thingy. So if you put your questions in there, then I'll make sure all of those get addressed. I think that's the important stuff. It says 1503, Rupa, to hand over to Victoria. Oh, sorry, 1502. Yes, I mean, the APPG was founded, I think Rosie Duffield is on the call as well. Rosie, our good friend Laura Smith, who's not an MP anymore. Tonya Antoniazzi, I think she couldn't make it today. A bunch of us in 2017 decided that there'd never been really any recognition of the single parent phenomenon in Parliament yet. It's increasingly common, it's sort of normal nowadays, it's not a weird phenomenon, and it should be taken more seriously in policy making. That was the point of the APPG. So 1503, yeah, I think we're still within time. Can I hand over first of all to Victoria, who's going to tell us about some exciting new research underway that complements some old research. Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you, Rupa, and thank you for hosting this event. It's really good that through the APPG, single parent families are given a focus in Parliament, and this is such an important platform for showing the issues that single parent families face, and also for developing solutions. I'm really pleased to speak to you today about the Single Parent Employment Challenge, primarily to the government, but also potentially to others such as business. The challenge is not only to support single parents into work, but also into better quality jobs that really make work pay. At Gingerbread, and in fact, we were formed in 1918 after the First World War, we have a wealth of evidence about single parents and work, included in-depth research that has explored the impact of the pandemic. We also hear daily about single parents' experience of working and caring alone through our peer support network and our helpline. The pandemic and the lockdowns over the last year were hard on everyone, but for the UK's 1.8 million single parents, it was substantially harder, exacerbating many of the financial, practical and emotional struggles they were already facing and making working and caring on their own an impossible balancing act. Single parents have long faced unfairness and inequality, and even before COVID-19. At the start of the pandemic, there were record numbers of single parents in work, 69%. But many of these single parents worked in sectors such as hospitality, high street retail and travel, jobs that have, of course, been particularly impacted by the pandemic. Single parents were also more likely to work part-time to combine caring and working on their own, with 50% of single parents compared to 25% of coupled parents working part-time. And single parents were more likely than coupled mothers to have a job that did not make the most of their qualification level. For instance, where they have a level 4 qualification, such as a degree, they are less likely, compared to a coupled mother, to work in a job that reflects that qualification. Too many single parents are trading down their jobs. Coupled mothers were earning nearly twice as much per week as a single mother, and I won't depress you further with a comparison with single men without children. Childcare costs remain high, and paying the upfront costs of childcare on their own has made entering work or trying to increase hours impossible for many single parents. Since the pandemic, the number of single parents on universal credit has reached more than 1.3 million. This change means that even more single parents will be expected to work, with single parents on universal credit expected to look for work when their youngest child turns 3 years of age. The number of parents overall looking for an elusive part-time job is increasing, and so we're going to see even more single parents chasing the low number of part-time jobs. I'm going to give you 3 examples of some of the difficulties faced by a single parent trying to find work in the pandemic. These 3 examples are drawn from our Standard Life funded research, for which we interviewed 45 parents in October. So firstly, Mary, she lives in the northeast with her 5-year-old son. Before the pandemic, she had a well-paid job as a business development manager, a job she could work full-time because the company let her do her job around her son. The company was severely impacted by the pandemic and she lost her job a year ago. And since that time, Mary has struggled to find a flexible job. At the same time, she has seen a decline in the after-school provision at her son's school, with no place available where she should to move into work. The advertised part-time jobs in the city where she lives are mostly entry-level and often involve weekend working. Mary is on universal credit and she has been asked by her work coach to apply for any work, including cleaning jobs. Mary has not secured employment. Lydia lives in the northwest of England and has a son who is aged 4, who started primary school in September. Lydia used to work for a high street retailer. During the pandemic, the shop was shut during the lockdowns and Lydia was furloughed twice. When the shop reopened, her hours were substantially cut and the job became unsustainable. Her pay didn't even cover her childcare and parking costs. Lydia is unemployed and is desperate to find work, especially as she's struggling financially with the loss of the £20 a week universal credit uplift. Lydia has applied for numerous jobs but has not been secured a role. She thinks the competition for jobs is fierce in her area, with lots of people having been made redundant. She has found that lots of advertised part-time roles are temporary and expects some weekend and evening working, and there's no available childcare for those times. And finally, Millie lives in Wales and has 2 primary school-aged children. Millie lost her job working in a cafe at the start of the pandemic. She was on a 0-hours contract, and so her working week was hard to juggle bringing up her children on her own. She found the transfer to universal credit difficult because of it being paid a month in arrears, and she had to take out a loan because she couldn't afford to pay her rent in the first month. She now has to pay this loan back over a 2-year period, which is a dent in her income each month. Millie does have a supportive work coach who has helped her with her CV and her work plans. She recently secured a job in social care through a friend, not a job advert, and is studying part-time. In the future, she'd like to be a nurse, a job that she thinks she would enjoy, but also that would provide security for her and her children. So last week's budget announcement did include some positive steps in the right direction for some single parents. The change to the work allowance and making the taper rate more generous for workers will support some parents to make work pay. And it's also positive that the government are consulting on a day one right to request flexible working and have recognised the importance of childcare, with some support announced for the childcare sector. But for many single parents, these measures don't go far enough. The context for single parents is that flexible jobs, particularly part-time, are in decline, with time-wise research showing that advertised part-time jobs have fallen to a level last seen in the 1990s. A day one right to ask for flexible working falls very short of the promise of jobs being advertised as flexible by default, and the budget does nothing to address the high upfront costs of childcare that make moving into a job out of the reach of too many single parents. But things could be so different for single parents, and action must be taken to address the following key issues. Number 1, the single parent unemployment rate is high at 12%. Support is needed to help single parents into work that reflects their skills and qualifications or supports their training into new areas of work. 2, better support is needed to help single parents into work that also takes account of their need to care for their children on their own. Specialist single parent advisors, like there used to be in job centres, would be a good starting point. 3, jobs being advertised as flexible by default could be a game changer for single parents. And our policy asks that the government incentivises job shares together with a register of job shares like the very successful register for the civil service, could really open up quality, better paying part-time work. 4, there needs to be a change in how childcare costs are made under universal credit. And at the very least, the government could follow the lead of Northern Ireland, where last week they announced that a non-refundable grant of up to £1,500 be made available to cover the upfront costs of childcare for those entering work. And finally, Gingerbread wants to see more aspiration in the work that single parents could do. The government has set out an ambitious plan for levelling up and a dynamic high-tech economy that can't be delivered while the skills and qualifications of up to 1.8 million single parents with children are effectively being wasted. Good quality, flexible work matched with affordable childcare could transform the working lives of so many single parents, which could result in a financial win for them and their children, but crucially also a win for the economy. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Victoria. I'm now going to go, in fact, we're going to take our speakers in a block, and then Mims Davies or someone from the ministry will answer with the new exciting programmes coming online on stream to help single parents back into employment or with the employment they have. But our next speaker is Jane Bonsell from Working Families, and maybe you can enlighten us. Gingerbread, everyone is familiar with after your not just 50 years, as you pointed out, since 1918 history, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Working Families and who funds you and what kind of work you do. Thanks, Jane.
Thanks so much for inviting me to this APPG. Working Families has a reasonably long history, not as long as Gingerbread. We've been in working as a charity for the last 40 years. And we exist to remove the barriers that working parents and carers face in the workplace. We do this in 3 ways: by empowering working parents and carers to understand and use their employment rights, by supporting employers to create, build and maintain flexible, family-friendly workplaces. And we use those 2 views, what we hear from working parents and carers about what's not working, and what we know from employers does work, to drive positive policy change. And in terms of our funding, most of our funding comes from the work that we do with employers to create, build and maintain those flexible workplaces. And we then get some grants and from trusts and foundations in order to provide our free legal advice line. And the policy work that we have, again, is partly funded by the work that we do with employers, because that income is unrestricted, and then partly funded by trusts. So last year, which, as we all know, was an extraordinary year in lots of really horrible ways, Working Families had 1.6 million unique views of our advice pages. And given that there are 13 million working parents within the UK, we thought that was an extraordinary amount. We also supported 3,100 individuals with bespoke advice. And through our 160 employer members, we positively impacted an additional 650,000 employees. And in the first 6 months of this year, we had more than 250 inquiries from single parents who would obviously be asking about very specific employment law questions. So as Victoria's mentioned, after the last 18 months, which have made the challenges working parents face more visible than ever, and sadly showcase the extra challenges faced by single parent families, this event is very timely. Currently, the single parent unemployment rate is high at 12%, while there are currently 1.1 million job vacancies in the UK. Of course, that's not to say they're all appropriate jobs for single parents, and may not give the flexibility that single parents need. But it does seem to us that there is improved job design and flexibility from employers could bring benefits to both parents and businesses. Additionally, government is running a consultation on flexible working. And while we're broadly supportive of the consultation proposals, we still have a way to go to ensure that access to flexible and secure work is in reach of those who need it. We also know that parents want to keep whatever flexible arrangements have been made available to them either through the pandemic or prior to the pandemic. And we have 9,000 downloads of our sample flexible working request every single month. So how can employers provide this additional flexible working, and why would they? For employers, offering flexible working allows them to attract talent and appeal to a wider demographic. Many employers have found this recently since moving to hybrid working arrangements, which also creates efficiencies and helps reduce their estate costs, their office costs. And we are also seeing, as a result of home working and digital working, opportunities being more widely distributed across the UK, while also widening access to the labour market, particularly for single parents who previously may have been unable to apply due to long commutes and the childcare and financial challenges this brings. This week, Working Families launched some research with King's College London, which provided further evidence that parents often sacrifice pay, progression and stability to achieve flexibility around their caring needs. As a result of this, employers are missing out on skilled and experienced candidates. And this is recognised by our employer member organisation. I want to give you a quote from Head of HR Steve Collinson at Zurich, who are working with the Behavioural Insights team and the Government's Equalities Office to understand how improving their flexible working can help their business. And Steve says that by offering roles that fit flexibly around family life, employers could open the floodgates to a much wider pool of untapped talent. This will also help women progress into higher paid jobs whilst fitting other commitments around their careers. Given the gendered nature of care in our society, offering more flexible working will also help firms to increase diversity and meet inclusion targets. Zurich particularly have found that by advertising every single job they have as part-time, job share and flexible, they have managed to attract not just more women to their roles, applying for their roles, but also more men, and increasingly more experienced senior women have been applying for those roles. Finally, and perhaps most importantly for businesses, there is a demonstrable productivity benefit for employers that embrace flexible working. A fantastic example of this is at EY. EY engaged a working family specialist to design and deliver an internal programme of behavioural and operational change. And the change programme, designed to scale across the business through identified change agents, impacted almost 10,000 employees in the UK. EY estimates that it's already achieved benefits of at least £15 million per annum from this change. It's not just financial service companies that have identified the business benefits of flexible work. For the Volvo Group, productivity and flexibility go hand in hand, as this quote from Kate Thompson, who's the Vice President of Human Resources at Volvo, demonstrates. When people can work flexibly in a way that supports them, we can't lose sight of the fact that they are more productive. And we know why single and other parents need flexible employment. It's clear that for single parents, flexible working isn't a benefit, it can be transformative to their lives. As we all know, single parents inevitably make more complex choices and trade-offs, with the cost of childcare being a key component in their decision-making, especially for those with children who are preschool age. And it's the prohibitive cost of having children in childcare and early education 5 days a week. That means most single parents work reduced or flexible hours, and that's not because they freely choose to, it's because they have to. And this issue doesn't just impact on single parent families, but almost all working families. This was identified recently in a Mumsnet mass poll, the working families and others supported. And that was looking at 20,000 parents, in which 96% of working parents said that they felt that ministers weren't doing enough to support parents with the cost and availability of childcare. We've seen that where single parent families have been able to access flexible working in the early years of life, working flexibly has often continued when children started school, as this makes it easier to work around children's other commitments and their other commitments and needs, showing that there are likely many more who could and would benefit from flexible working from day one. Where flexible working is in place, evidence also shows that flexible work creates opportunities to overcome current challenges linked to limited pay and progression opportunities. Job security, future financial security, and careers can all come about where good flexible working practices is in place. So, how do we improve job quality and employment opportunities for single parents? For employers, we would encourage them to look at job design. Employers need to think about the ways in which jobs and functions within them can be configured and what flexibility might be possible. Jobs should be advertised as flexible, stating what types of flexible working might be possible, or using the working family's happy to talk flexible working tagline in adverts. Employers can help their own employee engagement and potentially staff retention and success by asking working parents what they need and value at work, and help them to achieve that rather than relying on assumptions. And this could be through returners programs, interviews for both mothers and fathers returning to work after having a child. And how can government help? We'd like to see government recognise the value of flexible working across several policy agendas. Equalising employment opportunities across the country to help levelling up, enabling people to provide adult care, assisting parents with the first 1,001 days of their child's life, helping with the cost of living through reduced transport costs and, crucially, childcare costs. Specifically, in relation to the flexible working consultation, we'd like to see government introduce proposals to have flexible working requests as a day one right, shorten the response time employers have when requests are made, and lift the limit on how many times an employee can make a request in a year. If the process is managed well, there won't actually be any repeated requests. And crucially, we really think it's important that employers set out alternative arrangements or show they have considered these when they are rejecting flexible working requests. And as I've mentioned, and Victoria's mentioned, ultimately the high cost of childcare is intrinsically linked to parents' job quality, particularly for single parents. In an ideal world, working families would like to see free universal childcare available from 39 weeks. But for the world we're currently in, certainly better funding of the early years sector and universal credit claimants being provided with support for upfront childcare costs, as they are in Northern Ireland, would be particularly helpful. Thank you so much for inviting me to the APPG. I know Gingerbread does an extraordinarily good job in supporting single parents, but I'd also say there is some additional information on the Working Families website around specific employment issues or through our free legal advice line. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thanks ever so much. And we should sort of circulate to everyone who's here details of the advice line. It's legal advice, is it? Or all sorts of practical things. Good stuff. Thanks. Well, I'm hoping that we have the Minister for Employment on the line, or someone from the Ministry of Employment, certainly, to respond to that. Some interesting challenges. Brilliant. Mims is actually there. Really pleased to have Mims on.
Yeah, I'm here, Rupa. I'm sorry, my
day.
button is stuck. Hold on, I don't know. I'm definitely here, but my it's worked. There we go.
We can hear you loud and clear. And you've got a union job, all that stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, go for it, Mims.
Yeah, apologies for that. And good afternoon, and thank you for those really important and interesting presentations. So I managed to take a little holiday this summer, Rupa. And as you'll know, with being an MP with kids, it's not very many windows where you can actually go on a break. It's quite difficult. So I managed to do that, and I had all my documentation, as many people would know. There's a lot of documentation if you want to go anywhere or do anything. And my kid's mum, you're grumpy. There was nothing at all in the UK to book, which was you know, not exponentially expensive and took hours to get to. So we ended up going away to Spain. And I realised, Rupa, I had on my sort of wallet documentation, one of these things, I stand with single parents from the last time that we were together, focusing on single parents and supporting each other. And there's a few of us mums like this in Parliament, so it's really good. And I showed it to my kids and they were like, yeah, rock on, mum, well done. It was really nice, actually. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. And you know, it's a big old challenging role that everyone has as a single parent, and you may have different degrees of support, and you know, and all of that point around it. It takes a village. I absolutely know that myself. The other Sunday, you know, I had MP events. One child had a Lambda exam and then a birthday party, and you know, it was all like, oh my goodness. I had various people ferrying my children and supporting me out. So I know what it takes, and it's really challenging. And you know, so some people ask us, do we want to be PMs every day? And I'm like, no, I just need to know where the socks are and that there is a match and that we can get out the door on time. So I just wanted to talk about some of the work that we do at DWP to try and move people on from some of the challenges that Victoria and Jane described, and to really try and focus on some of the good stuff that is out there that we're trying to help people with. And I think, you know, confidence and the big challenge that you have in that day-to-day life, and then, right, how am I going to fit work and progression and everything I want for my kids around that, is really, really difficult. So we need that flexibility, and we, as we heard, know it means that more talent and productivity is taken up, that, you know, women and those who are sole carers, you know, get support and opportunities, and that actually disablement or other things that are going on with your return or whatever is happening in your life, you just get that opportunity to progress. And training, confidence, support, all of that is key. As we heard, flexibility, job design, but you may then end up sandwich caring, and there's lots of other barriers and challenges that come along, and it's really good as well that we're talking about menopause, and all of those other things can be additional barriers and challenges across your working life. I also, reflecting on some of the comments around flexibility in work and that sort of hybrid and what we're doing around the current phase consultation. It was announced, the consultation on making flexible working a default unless employers could show good reasons not to. It was a manifesto commitment to launch this. Yay, something we've delivered, wonderful. But I just wanted to reflect as well that flexible working does cover a range of working arrangements around time and place and hours, including part-time, including full-time, compressed hours, not just working at home and hybrid working. So, you know, just for people to not think this a bit too middle class in the nicest possible way. It's great that we're meeting this way, and this is a suitable way for us to do our jobs today. But for many people in hospitality, front of house, you know, public service life, that's you know, not an option. Being there is important, and we need to just make sure that works as well as possible around, you know, flexibility and everything else. Sorry, I think someone's listening in the background and the phone's got stuck. So just on the consultation and what it proposes, we are removing the 26-week qualifying period that employees have to make that request to work flexibly, which Jane sort of pointed out. That's in the scope. The proposal then brings into scope a remaining 10% of employers, 2.2 million people who currently don't meet that qualifying criteria. It will also explore the 8 current business reasons which could potentially remain valid in terms of the request being accepted or not. And it also requires employers to consider alternative approaches, such as flexible working, some of the things that we've suggested. Also allows more than one request in any 12-month period, which I think is very welcome, and also reduces the amount of time the employer has to consider the request. It's quite amazingly currently 3 months. It extends to England, Wales and Scotland, and the employment law for Northern Ireland is devolved. This, by the way, for those who want to contribute this, will close on the 1st of December. So if you haven't put your response in, please do. Just wanted to talk about briefly, before we go into questions, some of the bits that we do at DWP to help single parents to thrive. We've got particular programmes, so our local job centre teams can bring in and buy in particular programs to help people specifically. So in Avon and Somerset, Gloucester district, we are working with various employers who offer flexible working patterns and home working patterns, such as Bristol Energy, that's 100% home working that you can do, and other people like Wagamama to focus on tailored shifts and working with Tesco's and or the local NHS and various care roles around the district. And when I was recently at a Kickstart event with a young single mum, she had no idea, for example, that one of the restaurants she was going to talk to about a sector she was interested in, Coach, for example, do flexible support around parental hours and school pickups, etc., for exactly that reason. And with hospitality vacancies running so high, you know, more and more of this is out there. In Bath, we've been working as DWP through our flexible support fund with the Women's Work Lab. And this is a specific cohort of people, around 45 people who've have been part of this, and 9 job outcomes for people, particularly with returners, balancing children, needing refreshing of qualifications. And we're looking to replicate that across DWP. We're doing work in Powys in Wales with the Professional Association of Childcare and Early Years to really promote child minding and that career in Wales and support people to come into that. And also in Welshpool and Newtown, we've got specifically work with parents and childcare into employment to really focus on that long-term challenge there, where people can get stuck in the rut and just not know where to start, and also helping them to get more support with the limited childcare which is in that particular community. So what I would say through Plan for Jobs and our extra work coaches, 27,000 now, with the interventions of sector-based work academies where you can do actual training for up to 6 weeks. That will be flexed around your childcare and other support that you need. You can do some of these digitally as well. You can also do DWP Training Progress. That's up to 16 weeks training and learning, and it can be this way, flexed around childcare. To be part of the boot camps, and that can be in digital areas, for example. And as mentioned earlier, this means, of course, that if you have a disability, that you are able to come into the scope of work so much easier. So we've got additional employment advisors there. Lots of support for training and help. So, for example, people coming into TA roles quite works well with children, but also there is now a route into being a teacher from being a TA. So this can be a great way of your way back into the workforce as a single parent to earn enough money to balance what you need to do. So I can say lots more, Rupa, and I'm happy to during the Q&A, but I just wanted those dialing in to know and understand that we do get it. And I did hear from Jane and Victoria very strongly the challenges that people face. Quite often people don't know the amount of help that's there, which is why we've got our youth hubs for the under 25s. We've got a refreshed over 50s offer, and we're working very strongly with DfE around National Careers Service, because where to start is very often the biggest challenge. So I'll respond to questions, but you got someone here who gets it, and it's a pleasure to join you this afternoon.
Thanks, Mims. Good to have an ally there. I can see Ruth George, one of our former MP colleagues, has put stuff in the chat. I think everyone else, Gingerbread has been hacked before, so everyone else is not visible apart from the panelists. But Rosie and Henry, can we have our cameras on while we've got Mims? Because I think she might have to go off to something, and we can have a photo. Yeah, Rosie is there, hooray. Aidan, are you allowed to be, or is he faceless bureaucrat who's not allowed to be? And who's the person who's Gingerbread? I think that may be Henry.
Aidan's from the DWP team, Rupa, so he's allowed to be faceless.
Okay. Gingerbread, can you reveal yourself? No? Or should we just have the ladies? Should we have the photo? Hang on, I'm going to try and... my fingers are probably all over it. Screen grab. Yeah, my thumb's there. Right, brilliant. I also had a bit of a question. So the companies we've heard of, Volvo, EY, is that Ernst & Young in modern language? Okay, Wagamamas, they're all quite big firms. Is this, I remember at the time of the minimum wage, it was also said, oh, it's all right for those big companies, but the little guys will be bankrupted. I mean, I've done a lot of things with the small businesses and SMEs and those kind of people recently, and actually the 3 million excluded who've had not a penny, the completely self-employed. So just, yeah, where do they fit into all this, and are things being done to help smaller companies? But that's just me being nosy. Let me go to some of the ones in the chat. So wait, do I read these out, or Ruth George, is she allowed to? I don't know how this works. Should I just read out what Ruth George has said, and if she's able to make herself known? So Ruth was a High Peak MP until 2019. And she says the work requirements, and in fact, I think, was it Ruth, you did the APPG on universal credit back in the day? Right, so the question she's put is, the work requirements for 30 hours free childcare lock out many parents seeking work, or to do work-focused training, even for nursing. Parents of 3-year-olds are required to do 16 hours per week job search, but can only access 15 hours childcare, which travel time eats into. Please, can these be addressed? Is that sort of making sense? Should we take them one by one? Because I think they're quite different. And maybe the self-employment one as well. I mean, interestingly, I think in Jane's contribution, you did say how sort of hybrid working is making distance more and more irrelevant. I mean, we enjoyed it for a bit, but in the House of Commons, it's been and gone very quickly. I don't know if it's coming back given infection rates and cases. But Mims, would you be able to comment on all that for the moment?
So my colleague Will, who was very much at the forefront of the UC debate for several years, is now Children's Minister over at the DfE, and we know that the Prime Minister very much understands and gets this challenge, and he's there is work being undertaken to this. I think generally for lone parents and lead carers to be prepared for work, we know that that's around the age that the youngest is 2, to be able to look for and be available for work once their youngest is 3. So you sort of go through that preparation period, and I think that's really helpful to know what, actually getting into training, getting into that mindset, all of that is really helpful, and we're not asking people to go straight into something that's not going to work for them. And they, of course, we know that they have limitations on the hours that they can spend, because they'll be on school pickups, and be limited in the time that they can use to go to interviews, and that's exactly why our work coaches are able to lean in and talk to people and reflect on this. We've got a very much targeted and tailored approach around claimant commitment and understanding, and making sure that people are using that time productively. So, if maths or English or something is holding you back, do you need to do some digital courses and some training? Do you want to come to a mentoring circle to meet other people who are in the same boat? We'll be using that equally to, soldier spraying, look for jobs that aren't out there. So I wouldn't ever expect a work coach to be leaning in hard on a lone parent, and there could be health issues and other stuff going on, settling in issues going with school. And as long as you're engaging with your work coach, keeping positive about this, and we will arm you and support you with everything that you need to go on to the next stage. And we have just, of course, put together the In-Work Progression Commission, which has put a report out. We are currently looking at the response, and we'll hope to get something out in government speak very shortly, which means we're working very hard on it, and we're trying to get a point that we can land it. And of course, childcare and all of those things came up very strongly in terms of work. So it's not only just getting into work, it's progressing in work as well. So I would say to people, please don't feel worried about talking to your work coach. Engage, share, particularly use that time around training. As I said, the DWP TAP, it's 16 weeks of training and learning, which you could be doing alongside a DFE bootcamp on digital, if that's something that's right for you. I recently met some of our Google certificate learners. They were of all ages, all backgrounds. Some had children and responsibilities. It was a level 3 qualification, completely free from Google, which was getting people into digital areas, from influencing to marketing, etc. All done around caring responsibilities, all supported through universal credit. So it is out there. We're not necessarily expecting you to walk into the dream job and be ready and earning enough money straight away. We will give you those tools to help you progress.
Okay, a couple more in the chat. So Megan Meek O'Connor says, are there plans to train job coaches in the specific needs of single parents, or plans for schemes like Restart or Kickstart tailored to parents' needs? We need to ensure that there's support explicitly tailored towards parents. I noticed Stella Creasy is doing a thing for getting mums into politics, not just single mums, but any old kind of mums. So yeah, sort of more, I don't know, making people...
Does that make us an any old mum, Rupa and others?
In my case, actually, look at all this grey hair.
Yeah,
So and shall I, Mims, are you going to run off? Can I get in the other one just in case?
Yeah,
you
please do.
A recent survey by the TUC of 13,000 found that 50% of working mums had their requests for flexible working rejected. 87% said they faced discrimination because of asking. With this in mind, does the minister not think that a right to ask for flexible working is not working, even if it is a day one right to ask? So in practice, it seems to not be happening. And that an advertising duty where employers must say what flexible working is, what is available in the job advert, and would be much more effective. Yeah, I think people are getting away with ignoring this, basically.
Yeah, Rupa, so that's why the consultation, it's led by Bays, employee rights is led by Bays. So my sort of clue on my job is put the word letters "un" in front of employment. My job is to get people into employment, progressing and earning and doing well, and Bays do the rights and responsibilities once you're there. But you know, if you can't get in there for some of the reasons we've described today, then we all have a responsibility across government to look at that. So I'm absolutely not being slopey shouldered on this, far from it. So a couple of things on this. You mentioned smaller employers, Rupa. And I actually think what we do both with gender pay gap reporting, easy for me to say, and also wider stuff, which larger companies tend to do, and you know, set the standard. And actually I have a friend who moved from another accountancy firm to EY for exactly the reasons that you've just described, because they were absolutely blooming marvellous about supporting the fact that she had 3 kids and needed, you know, working conditions that work with that. But so they can set the standard and be the standard bearers, and they can show how the productivity and how the impact works. And actually you retain great staff, you retain loyalty, all the positives of having, you know, somebody who, you know, really appreciates the fact that they're understood. And so I'm, you know, a single busy working mum. Most of my staff have some kind of caring responsibility or something going on in their lives. So when, you know, I go, oh, it's all gone wrong, they've got the same. Why would I expect any different? You know, just because you move up the pole or do a different thing, you know, everybody has the same things going on in life. And, you know, that will be with large or small employers. So the fact that larger employers can show the way, show the productivity, show the benefits, show the retention, show the fact that it helps people progress and stay in their business is a great way to help incentivize and support smaller employers, so it doesn't just carry on the too difficult list. Now, the good thing about the large amount of vacancies is these days, funnily enough, people are going, do you know what, I don't want the ready-made product. I'm quite happy to train and support and reflect on the needs of my potential employer. I don't want to overlook the talent down the road. I want somebody down the road who's not going to move away or think that something's better or different. And actually the fact that they're committed to the local school and, you know, everything around them means that they're going to stay and be more committed to that business. So I think some real opportunities there, and I think employers are starting to see that. And it's an employees market right now, so it's a great time to ask for that support and that help. And you know, it's frankly horrendous that people are getting these rejections, but as the labour market continues to need people, guess what, you'll become more valuable, and that's great. And that's also pushing up wages and other ways that you can, you know, do better with the efforts that you're putting in. And I think one thing the pandemic has also shown is a bit of flexibility, a bit of give and take by employers means that actually you come out of it stronger, more productive, more together. And therefore, a lot of employers have realised, you know what, actually, let's value what we've got, and amen to that is my feeling.
Okay, thanks ever so much. Jane and Victoria, have you got any comments you want to chuck in, or even Rosie? But I think Rosie's lost her voice from what I remember.
I would just say two things. Firstly, the TimeWise research is showing a huge shortage of part-time roles at the moment, and back to the 1990s levels, which is, isn't brilliant for single parents who generally need to do part-time work. So we would love to see an increase in the number of part-time roles that are available. And secondly, this issue, childcare is such a major point for single parents. As it says in the questions, the shortage of affordable childcare is a huge factor, and we get people phoning our helpline who've had to turn down jobs because they can't find childcare in the area that they live in, and it's particularly acute over the school holidays. So I think, and I know this isn't part of your department's remit, but I think if you're going to get single parents back into work, or indeed any working parents, the childcare situation really needs to be examined very closely.
Well, if they ever let me in DfE, I will definitely have a lot of my understanding of the challenges of school holidays and working. And what we don't want is people, latchkey at home, unsafe, getting into, stuff that normally you wouldn't let them down the precinct with 100 people they don't know, but they could be online talking to those people. So we need to make sure that, thinking around the safety and the exercise of our kids as the former sports minister. So I absolutely agree on that. And I know it's a big focus for Will. Now he's in his new department, and for the government, there's no magic wands on this, but everybody wants to do a bit more, whether it's kind of sports and governing bodies and giving more opportunities. I know the holiday activity stuff has been great as well. It's incredibly welcome, and also we just need to keep our kids fit and active. One thing we've definitely seen around the pandemic is the impact of being up in a high rise, not being able to get out and about, what impact it has on wider well-being and mental health, and it makes all of that side so much more important. It's been great to join you, Rupa. I'll let you ladies carry on because I'm being hollered to be elsewhere, but look forward to carrying on the conversation, and appreciate you letting me join you this afternoon.
Thanks, Mims, and have a word with those colleagues in the other departments, because
I always am.
Brilliant, thanks ever so much.
Brilliant,
okay.
Thanks, Rupa.
Thank you. See you later. Brilliant. Fab. Okay, so hang on, who else have we got in the chat?
Rupa.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Jane. Yes, of course.
Sorry, I wonder if I could come in.
Yes,
very
please do. Yeah.
Looking at size of employers, working families employ members tend to be the larger employers, and there's a lot of push in terms of gender pay gap reporting for them to try and recruit and place women in senior part-time and job share roles. Which is fantastic. What we're finding is that for people working for SMEs, it can be much more challenging. And that's where having human-sized jobs is really important. And the working parents and carers who call us are wanting to keep their jobs. They don't want to lose their jobs. So for us, one of the things that we always do is talk to people about how they can negotiate with their employer. Trial periods are always a really good thing to do, so that you can try and find the flexibility that works for you. And in the early 2000s, we did some work with micro-organisations, organisations that employed under 10 people. And we found with them, they were much more able to be flexible, partly because they completely trusted the people that they were employing. And they knew that if they said, I need to nip home because I've had a crisis with childcare, that they'd make up their hours, and that the team that they were working with would also be supportive of that. So there are things employers can do who aren't the kind of, EY size in terms of looking at roles and trying to understand what their employees might need.
Thanks. And just something that occurred to me at the other end of the age scale, well, I don't know, at the is the T levels, I don't know if you guys know about those, the BTEC is being phased out. I think it's set to completely disappear. And it was Colleges Week the other day. I went to our local FE college. They're worried that this new T levels thing is work experience based. I mean, Rosie and I are both employers, very small scale employers. We have a bit of a budget. We can get about 4.5 people out of it if we're creative. But yeah, no, apparently this T levels thing, there are not enough employers to do it. The worry is if you're not in London, and even if you are in London, which is somewhere where there are a lot of employers, you may not have the bank of employers to partner with on this course. And also it's very specific. So the people I was talking to is in a former art college, and you know, they're all the people with their big portfolios under their arm. The teacher there was saying that they have to decide if they're specialising in ceramics, fabrics or whatever, whereas at the moment they do the whole lot, 3D design, drawing, whereas with the T level it's really pretty tunnel vision. And I don't know if that's something that's come across your radar. I mean, again, when I went to my job centre recently, they were trying to push having a Kickstart employee in my office. I just didn't think, I don't know, it's not a normal route for MPs, and we have quite prescribed roles and scales and all those. So, but would be interested to hear other people's experience of any of that.
I'm afraid we don't have any experience of that, but I know there are a number of organisations within the charity sector who are trying to get Kickstart things going amongst smaller charities. Probably, if people want to know about that, NCVO might be a National Council for Voluntary Organisations, might be a good place to try and find out about it. I'm afraid that's the limit of my knowledge.
Victoria, were you going to say something, or did I imagine that?
No, I'm afraid I don't have any experience either. I suppose I would just say that one of the issues for single parents is that they do have high qualifications. You know, they're generally, the average age of a single parent is 38, and they have a good level of qualifications, but they're not able to use them. So one of the examples that I just used was of somebody who is a kind of director level being channeled towards cleaning jobs. And you know, single parents want to work and they want to make use of their qualifications, but it's often really, really difficult for them to do that because of the availability of the flexible jobs at that level, but also the availability of childcare.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, in fact, that this art lecturer was saying is that things like animation, animation companies have given up their offices because it's a lot of real estate and they all do it remotely. So, you know, the stuff we were saying, that distance becomes less important. Whereas with the T levels, it has to be a physical employer. So all these people that have gone 100% online don't count. I mean, again, the House of Commons is very resistant to change. I quite like the old hybrid model, even I think for Labour Party meetings of an evening, rather than going to a dark, dusty hall, which could be a bit scary, going down the alley. I find it more comfortable. You can get the kids' dinner around it and everything. I think we should be keeping the good stuff. I don't know what other people's experience of this is, but I feel in Parliament, it's like COVID never happened to some extent.
During the pandemic, working families heard from working parents who were in incredibly difficult positions. So, for example, we heard from somebody who was a telephone helpline operator, and they were being told that they had to answer every single call while working from home with 2 children under 5. It's impossible. You can't, I mean, you just cannot do that. So for us, that was a real challenge for working parents. And one of the things that's come out of our recent research that we did with King's College has shown that so many parents, particularly single parents, will be put in a position where they have to make those what to me are ridiculous choices of not being able to continue with a career that they're particularly good at and actually pays really well, and are constantly being pushed into jobs which provide them perhaps with the security that they need and the stability and the flexibility, but certainly not a career progression. And the impact on that for women across the whole of their working lives is particularly challenging, because it impacts on their pension pot, and women tend to live longer than men. So it's a real challenge, the lack of flexible working.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Jane, and just to say, during the pandemic, we also heard a lot of single parents couldn't work from home. There were a high proportion of them were key workers, or obviously working in kind of jobs that didn't allow them to work from home. But those that were, they were told, if they were told by their employers, don't worry, we're flexible, you can do your work in the evenings after the children are in bed. That was also a really impossible situation for parents, because they were working such ridiculously long hours, and we saw that had a very high impact on their well-being and their mental health. So, you know, even those employers that did believe they were being flexible, it was still really, really tough.
Yeah, I'd completely echo that. Yeah,
actually, with a single parent academic friend of mine from before all this, we've done a joint paper on, it's called actually Biscuits and Unicorns, because these two quite memorable TV instances. I think one was on Sky when the female presenter, I think she was talking about Afghanistan or something, and the boy comes in and says, "Can I have a biscuit, mummy?" And she says, "Yeah," and he goes, "2 biscuits." So he's negotiating, and the presenter says, "Oh, sorry, bit of a domestic there." And I think he was really attacked. So when it happened on the BBC, a little girl rearranging unicorns, the presenter was at pains. "Hello, little girl, what is your name? And what is your unicorn called?" So we've called it Biscuits and Unicorns, because I bet we've all got stories of where that's accidentally happened, kind of thing. So yeah, no, it's boon as well as bane. And again, not everyone has the technology, not everyone's got whatever it is, 5 laptops in the house, so every kid can be doing the homeschool stuff, as well as mummy and daddy doing work or whatever, or just mummy or just daddy or whatever. Yeah, however many, I don't know, we have big families in my seat, not just 5, 10 maybe, who knows. Right, anyone want to chuck in any last minute? I think we're 3 minutes to the end. Or people always like a meeting that finishes early. That's another thing.
We would, just to say, Rupa, that working families would encourage people to respond to the flexible working consultation that's out, that closes on the 1st of December. If you go to gov.uk, there is some information on that.
That's what Mims was talking about. I think we should circulate everyone's, all the different helplines, because Gingerbread's got a very good one as well, and Working Families one. And Rosie's in the chat. I think everyone can see. Apologies. Yeah, I knew you'd lost your voice. Sorry about making you turn your camera. So that's cool. Okay, I think we will circulate these details around. 1st of December. Okay, a bit of time.
Yeah. So if people can respond to that, that would be incredibly helpful.
Hurrah. Okay. Anything else? Last minute closing pearls of wisdom. Okay, so I think we should maybe hold Mims Davies to this, possibly someone who's missing it, either Finley from my office or Henry from Gingerbread. Maybe we write on headed paper, we can make an APPG letterhead. You said X, Y, and Z. Or, thanks for coming, as raised these issues, we'd be pleased if you can look into them. Because it seems, flexible working, it's more of an aspiration than a reality at the moment, although officially it's supposed to be there. And again, it also can mean that there is no such thing, there's no escape. Your home has become your office and you're working more. It can be, a bit of a prison as well. Okay, well, look, thanks everyone for being there. And we'll have another one. I think we're planning January, is it?
January, yes.
In the new year. And that's when that report will be totally finished. Okay, thanks everyone. Those you can see and those lurking in the background. Brilliant. I declare the meeting closed at 15:59. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.